evening, everybody. I should start by saying why I named my book as The Crooked Timber of New India. I borrowed this phrase, crooked timber, from an 18th century philosopher called Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant wrote a famous essay called Idea of a Universal History with a Cosmopolitan Purpose, in which he said, out of the crooked timber of humanity, nothing straight can ever be made. Out of the crooked timber of humanity, nothing straight can ever be made. Then I thought, looking around what is happening in India, out of the crooked timber of New India, nothing straight can ever be made. That is why I chose this title. When I chose this title and suggested this to my publisher, some of the friends who heard this title, they said, people might mistake it for a book on timber trade. I stuck to the title, but somehow nobody mistakes it for a book on timber trade. Everybody got the idea of what I wanted to say. I should also tell you, why did I choose to call this book in the subtitle, Essays on a Republic in Crisis? It's a big thing to say that our republic is in a crisis. Why do I call the present situation as a crisis? I must tell you that I am not going to say anything new or anything that you already do not know. I will only tell you those things which you already know, but I will try to bring all those things together and make an effort to show what kind of a pattern they make and why that pattern is leading us into a crisis, has already led us into a crisis. Mine is a very, very modest, small effort. Before I start discussing the nature of the crisis, I want to tell you what kind of a criticism I receive and I received for writing this book. First of all, when I wrote this book, I sent it to some established publishers. First of all, I wrote them a mail saying that, look, I have a book. Would you like to publish it? Immediately I get a mail reply saying that, yes, please send them. Please send it. So I sent. Then I don't hear from them. I wait for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, and more than a month. Then I keep on mailing them. There's no response. And I'm not somebody who give up very easily. So I went on mailing them. Finally, I hear from them saying, we have a huge backlog because of COVID. Can you wait for some time? Are you in a hurry? Padmanabhan, I said, I'm not in a hurry. I'll wait. But tell me how long I should wait. Then they said the load is such, maybe you have to wait until 2024. Then I said, will you publish it 2024? They said, we'll consider it 2024. They will consider it in 2024. Then I got the message. I understood. Look, I can wait, but not so long. So I went to a different publisher, and this publisher is a bold publisher. They published it. Okay, here we are. The reason why I said this is, this also is an indicator of New India. Publishing houses are careful. They're very cautious. I told you I wanted to give you an idea of what kind of a criticism that I receive. People mail me. Known people call me. One, they say, look, Prabhakar, don't you see anything positive? What's wrong with you? You always seem to notice only that which is going wrong. Is something wrong with you? So negative you are. I say, I'm not negative. I am somebody like a diagnostician. You go to a doctor, and the doctor examines you and tell you, there's something wrong with your heart or gallbladder, whatever. Would you storm out of his room, stamping your feet, saying that, look at this negative fellow, my eyes are so good, my ears are wonderful, I'm able to hear everything properly, I'm able to walk, my hands are good, they're strong. Just there is a little problem in my heart, and this fellow concentrates only on that. Such a negative fellow. The point is that for your eyes and for your ears, for your hands, for your legs, all that, you don't expect a doctor to say, wonderful eyes, wonderful ears, wonderful legs. No. He will tell you what is going wrong. And there are so many people in the television studios who cheer you for your eyes and your ears and your feet and your hands and all that. I don't have to join that club and go on do the bhajan. I say, look, there is a problem with the heart of India. That is my job. Then they say, okay, but once in a while, Gopalamurthy, you should also say, that is right, this is right, that is good, this is good. This particular thing is bad. So that, you appear to be impartial, even-handed. Why don't you do that? Sometimes say something is good. I tell them, I don't have to praise somebody for something in order to earn my right to be critical. I don't have to do that. I have an inalienable democratic right as a citizen to be critical and to say point blank when something is going wrong, that something is going wrong. Another criticism is, well, okay, you have pointed out so many problems. It's very easy to point out problems. Tell us what is the solution. You are sitting in a comfortable room and writing all these problems. What should we do? You have to tell that also, isn't it? I tell them, I don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't know. And I don't have to know the solution in order to point out a problem. I don't have to. There are experts. If there is a problem with, inflation, go to an expert. If there is a problem with infrastructure, go to a professional. There is some problem with democracy, representation, parliament, elections. There are people. Talk to them. Talk to them. Talk to them. Democracy means talking. Democracy is dialogue. Democracy is not just election, casting vote once in every 5 years. That's not democracy. It's important, but you have to talk. You have to have a discourse, a discussion. Talk to them. They will tell you. Oh, okay. Then, one more. Okay. So you're not happy with this. Fine. Tell me who is there. If not this man, who else? I don't know. I don't have to know. 130 crore Indians will decide who should replace, not me. Let's leave it to the people. Let them decide. Let the country decide, then let the nation decide. So, is it necessary for me to also tell you who is the alternative, to say that what is happening is not good? Is it necessary? It's not necessary. I don't think it is my responsibility to say, not this person, but that person. You decide who should. But my job is to say, look, what is happening is wrong. That is my right in a democratic country. This book is nothing if not an exercise of my inalienable democratic right. That's my belief. Then I must tell you, what is the reason for me to say that this republic is in a crisis? Sir, please recall, last year, 2022, there was a huge unrest in Bihar. There were lathi charges, lot of young people becoming so restless in connection with railway recruitment. Do you remember? Anybody? Yeah? Please also recall what was the reason. The reason, Gopalan Kuti, was there was an advertisement for 35,000 jobs in the railways. 35,000 jobs. They are called NTPC jobs. Do you remember? Non-technical preferred categories. They are non-technical. It's a euphemistic way of saying they are menial manual jobs. That's all. Nothing much. So 35,000 non-technical jobs, the number of applicants was 1 crore 25 lakhs. Do you remember? For 35,000 jobs, there were 1 crore 25 lakh applicants. You can imagine. That is the kind of youth unemployment in this country. It is miserable. India today has the largest percentage, one of the largest percentages of youth unemployment. It's nearly 24%. And do you remember? 53% of India's population is young. 53%. We are in the company of Lebanon, Syria, Iran, in the quantum of youth unemployment. And our small neighbor, Bangladesh, has 12% youth unemployment. I'm not comparing India with Japan, Korea, and all that. I'm just comparing it with Bangladesh. It's half of our youth unemployment rate in that country. This is one. I'll give you one more. I'll give you a little more details about the economy, but just to give you the kind of things that I'm going to put before you. We are, what the government tells us, in the Amrit Kaal. Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. We are celebrating. This started in 2022, August 15th, isn't it? Please recall, on the morning of August 15th, 2022, 14 or 15 people who were not accused, who were convicted of raping and killing an unborn child were released. When they were released, when they came out of the prison, they were garlanded. Do you remember? One more, if you want. Recently, in the new Parliament building, somebody called Ramesh Bidhuri. You know what he said? Remember? He called another member of Parliament on account of his religion a terrorist, etc., etc. Nobody from the government or the ruling party said anything. Nobody objected to it. Nobody pulled him up. Nobody condemned. When women athletes expressed their anguish that the Wrestling Foundation chairman was behaving towards them in an unacceptable manner. They were agitating. Nobody from the ruling dispensation, either government or the party, went to them and said, "What is the problem? Talk to us." Nobody. And that person also happens to be a member of Parliament. When Article 370 was taken out, there was some agitation in Jammu and Kashmir. Almost all the members of Parliament from J&K, 3 former chief ministers, and various number of activists were arrested and sent to different parts of the country. We did not bother. Nobody questioned. Parliament went into session. Parliament was in session, Padmanabhan, and members of Parliament noticed that J&K members were not present in the House. Nobody stood up and said, "Look, my colleagues from Jammu and Kashmir are not here. How can this be?" Nobody bothered. Our own state, in the Republic, called Manipur, is burning. Villages after villages are torched. The entire nation was shocked for one day when they heard about 2 women paraded naked. One day we were shocked. After that, oh, something else is important. And the leader of this country till today did not find time to go to Manipur. He went to far distant countries, not to Manipur. Not only that, he did not go, but when large delegation belonging to his party and other parties came to Delhi and waited for weeks and weeks, he did not find 5 minutes to meet them. I'm sure you all recall when dollar was 78 rupees, 79 rupees, it was somewhere around, about to touch 80. We were all concerned for a day. For 2 days, it's touching 80. We were all very concerned. The media, the television studios, the debates, the newspapers, and all that. And do you know how much is a dollar today? How much? 83. We are not bothered. Well, one day we shouted, all right. We didn't shout. We saw some television anchors shouting. One day. Over. Last 9 years, the government of India has written off 25 lakh crore corporate debt. 25 lakh crore corporate debt in 9 years. A corporate house owes 87,000 crores to a bank or a consortium of banks. And the government and the banking industry decide that you pay us 2,000 crores, we'll write it off. That's the kind of thing. And if you don't pay your EMI for a couple of days, what happens? All hell breaks loose. But 25 lakh crore corporate debt is written off. Okay. Last 10 years or 9 years, we have added 100 lakh crores to our national debt. 100 lakh crore. Last 9 years. The total debt, national debt today, stands at 150 lakh crores. What does it mean? It means for 70 years, the national debt was 50 crores. The latest figures tell us that last year, the domestic savings have contracted by 19%. What does it mean? It means if my domestic saving was 100 rupees earlier, last year I could save only 81 rupees, isn't it? So 19 rupees it is contracted. That impacts on how much do you spend for food, how much do you spend for housing, how much do you spend for your clothes, how much do you spend for your medical expenditure, your education for children, etc., etc. Everything. And inflation. The Reserve Bank of India tells us that the highest band that the country can tolerate, this is the Reserve Bank of India, not Parakal Prabhakar's figure, is 6%. Now, I don't recall 6% inflation at all in the last several years. It fluctuates, but the latest is somewhere around 7, 7.5, 7.3. Urban is 7.2, and rural is 7.2, and urban is about 10% also. That is the kind of inflation. This is the general inflation. Food inflation is more than 10%. Medical inflation is more than 10%. Education inflation is more than 10%. These are very important things. And the unorganized sector is completely demolished, mainly because of the mindless demonetization. We were told when demonetization was done that it is in order to check black money. I don't know how many of you have black money. I too don't have, but I know people who have black money. I'm yet to come across, not only in India, but anywhere in the world, somebody who has black money, keeping black money in cash. Do you know anybody who is keeping a lot of, unless he has taken the bribe yesterday and day before? Normally black money is converted into land, plots, properties, etc. Gold. Yeah. Do you have? No. You just know. So, anybody who knows the basic economic situation anywhere in the world, and India, does not demonetize nearly 83% of the currency that is in circulation. Okay. Then they realized, then they said, no, it's not because of that. We want to digitize the economy, reduce cash. That is the reason why we demonetized. Okay. Fair enough. You know what happened? 99% of the cash that was demonetized has royally been taken to the banks and new notes were taken. 99%. And when that huge quantum of cash was demonetized, the cash in circulation was about 14 lakh crores. The rest was digital. Today, after demonetization, after so much of hardship for people like you and me, middle class, lower middle class, small people, today, the cash in the economy is nearly 3 times more than what it was when the demonetization has taken place. It is roughly about 35 lakh crores of cash. Cash has increased. So what's the point? But what happened? What happened was that the entire unorganized sector was decimated, destroyed. Even today, the unorganized sector, especially the rural sector, has not recovered from that major blunder that was done, called demonetization. Immediately after that, you had pandemic. And that resulted in a huge fall in an economy. It's to such an extent that probably you all remember, in one quarter in 2021, India registered minus 25%. It has contracted 25% in the economy. Today, the government tells us that we are the fastest growing economy in the world. Did you hear that? We have overtaken Great Britain and become the fifth largest economy in the world. I will give you a simple thing. I think I'm spending too much on the economy, isn't it? In 2019, the size of the economy, today the size of the economy, if you compare, you have not gone back to the 2019 size yet. We are still less than our own size in 2019. When my own size today is less than my own size in 2019, tell me, how is it possible that I overtake somebody? How is it possible? It is possible when the other guy falls even lower than me, isn't it? That is the only reason. Or I manipulate the data. You know, old India used to measure a lot of things. When you had a 4-lane road for 1 kilometer, in old India, it was 1 kilometer of 4-lane road. You know what is it today? 1 kilometer of a 4-lane road is 4 kilometers. Do you know? So you can show a lot of progress, can you not? Because 4 times more. Once upon a time, India's statistical architecture was very respected throughout the world. People like P.C. Mahalanobis, C.N.R. Rao, and people like that. Not only other developing countries, but even developed countries used to utilize their services, the consultancy services given by these people, to set up their own statistical architecture. Today, you cannot trust any figures that are put out by the government. Government doesn't put out any figures. Forget it. You don't have data. And when Parliament questions were asked, how many migrant labor died? We don't have data. How many people died during pandemic? We don't have authentic data. How many ventilators? No data. How many oxygen cylinders? What is the quantum of oxygen? No data. There is no data. But the Prime Minister of this country goes to Karnataka during the election campaign and tells a public meeting that these opposition fellows have abused me for 99 times, not 100, not 98, precise 99 times. They have data when it comes to these kind of things, but not what is the jobless data. No. How many youth are unemployed? No. How many are in poverty? No. We don't have. This is the situation. I don't want to throw too much of data onto you, but you get the point what I'm trying to say. There are many, many things. There is major shift in the political discourse of India. I'm sure many people remember that today's ruling party used to say, we are also secular. Rajgopal, you are the one who reminded me of Gandhian socialism. Their founding creed was Gandhian socialism. Nobody knows when that was buried. Nobody remembers. And they used to say, we are also secular, but genuinely secular. Not pseudo-secular like these fellows. Fine. Today, what is everybody saying? Everybody is saying, we are also Hindu, but not like them. Look at the change. It is no small change. It is a hugely important shift that has taken place in New India. People used to hesitate to say that this country belongs to Hindus. Everybody else is subordinate. Everybody else is second class. People, even when they believed it also, people used to be very hesitant to say this, and they used to say, we are also secular, but we are not appeasing, we are not, we are not trying to give them more and more. No, we are genuinely secular. We treat everybody equal. That kind of a thing they used to say. Whatever they had in mind. But today, they are bold enough to say, who are these people? Go to Pakistan. If you are not happy here, why are you here? Who asked you to be here? Go. You have a country there. Go there. Why are you here? If you want to be here, Hindustan mein rehna hai to. Do you remember that slogan? If you have to live in Hindustan, you have to say Jai Shri Ram. What else? That's the kind of thing. You see, the ruling party today is the biggest political party in the country. Probably on the planet, we don't know. Probably in the cosmos, we don't know. But this political party, running government, for the first time in the history of this republic, there is not a single Muslim minority in the government. Nobody. Not even cabinet minister, not even the council of ministers, not even minister of state. Nowhere. Not a single. There is not a single Muslim minority member in their Lok Sabha parliamentary party. There is no single Muslim minority member in their Rajya Sabha parliamentary party. In their entire parliamentary party, nobody belonging to the largest minority of this country has a place. Not only that, the biggest state of our republic, Uttar Pradesh, there is not a single MLA who belongs to the largest minority in the country. Not a single member. Not only there is not a single MLA, but not a single person was even given a ticket to contest. Whether they win or not is a different thing. Not a single person was given a ticket. In last 2 elections, last 6 elections, in Gujarat, not a single Muslim minority was given a ticket. I don't know how many people you have noticed. Last Karnataka election, not a single Muslim minority was given a ticket by the largest political party of our republic, the ruling party of our republic. We don't respect parliament anymore. In spite of, touching the parliament with the head and all that. That was long ago, 2014. But today we don't bother about parliament. I'll tell you why I say this. I'm not just saying this casually. We had passed 3 farm laws related to agriculture. Some people say they are good, some people say they are bad. I'm not going into that. People have their own opinions about it. But the point I'm trying to make is that those 3 farm laws were passed in just 10 minutes without any discussion. And these farm laws impact the largest part of India because, we have a large, huge rural sector. And the entire rural sector is either directly or indirectly dependent upon the agriculture sector, the farm sector. The Parliament of India did not spend more than 10 minutes to pass 3 laws impacting such a huge sector in the Indian economy. They were passed. And there was an agitation. When the agitation was taking place, who are those people? They were anti-India forces. And they're not. They're out to destroy India. They're agitating about farm laws. They are seditious. They are indulging in treason. They are Khalistanis. They want to divide this country. They want to destroy this country. That was the kind of propaganda. Okay. Probably true. We don't know. I don't know. But we've decided to withdraw those laws. Why? And because, they were enacted in Parliament, they have to be withdrawn in Parliament. So we took 10 minutes to pass 3 farm laws. There was an agitation. We called the agitators all sorts of names. Then we decided to withdraw. We took 5 minutes to withdraw 3 farm laws. No discussion. To pass, there was no discussion. To withdraw, there's no discussion. We don't talk. We don't talk to farmers. We don't talk to, our own people. But we still call ourselves democracy. There is no dialogue. There is no engagement. We don't bother. We sell public sector undertakings cheaply, to whom. And we say that we are giving 3 cylinders free. You take these 3 cylinders, but I call my friend and give him 3 airports. So, by shutting your mouth, by giving 3 cylinders, I am able to give 3 or 4 or 6 airports to my close friend. This is what is happening. This is a crisis. And look at the social fabric. You have lynchings. You have killings. so-called Dharma Sansads calling for genocide, mass killings. You have Swamijis asking people to keep arms in their homes so that when those fellows come, we can kill them. Swamiji is giving that kind of a call. I think this is a crisis in the Republic. And before I end, I want to say this in a very responsible way. I do not want to go away from Kozhikode without saying this. That is the following. If this kind of a drift from our fundamental values of liberalism, diversity, secularism, tolerance, if this drift away from these values is not arrested, if it is not stopped, what is likely to happen is the little dog whistles that you hear today from here and there, you will hear them from the ramparts of Red Fort on August 15th. That is the danger, which is real danger, that is staring at us, at the Republic. If this is not arrested, what happened in Gujarat in 2002, what is happening in Manipur today will happen everywhere. Who will stop? Who will stop?